I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, school districts around the state are being asked to put the brakes on a controversial method of raising money. And federal regulators announced their next step for dealing with problems at the San Onofre nuclear plant.
And I'm Peggy Pico. San Diego may be America's finest city, but at 3 million people and growing, our quality of life is changing. Tonight, the surprising results of a new report on how San Diego compares to Los Angeles in traffic, housing, open space, and much more. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Irwin Jacobs and by
Hello, good evening. Thanks for joining us. State officials are asking school districts to put a hold on issuing capital appreciation bonds. Those bonds rely on longer repayment times and higher interest rates. Districts can wind up paying many times what they borrowed in the first place. Poway Unified is a perfect example. It will pay nearly $1 billion for a $105 million bond. Lawmakers are considering legislation to tighten rules on these types of bonds. Until they take action, districts are asked to refrain from issuing any more. Federal regulators say they've created an oversight panel for the San Onofre plant in the North County. It will evaluate a proposal to restart the nuclear facility. They'll also search for the root cause of problems with the plant's steam generators. It's been nearly a year since a leak prompted the plant to shut down. The panel will be led by a deputy from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Arrests of people crossing the border illegally fell to a record low in San Diego last year. Fronteras reporter Adrian Florido joins me from the News Center with more on this story. How many people did the Border Patrol arrest last year, Adrian, and how does it compare to previous years?
Well, a community meeting last year, San Diego's Border Patrol chief said that in 2012, the Border Patrol locally arrested about 28,400 people attempting to illegally cross the border. That's a pretty steep drop over previous years. In 2008, there were 162,000 people they arrested, 118,000 people in 2009. In 2010, 68,000 people, and in 2011, 42,000 people. So you can see that there's been a pretty steep and steady drop over the last 5 years.
And what does the report say is causing the steep drop?
Well, there are a number of reasons. I mean, there's been a pretty large increase in the number of Border Patrol agents locally here in San Diego over the last few years. There's also been a big increase in investment in terms of dollars for technology, for building taller and thicker border fences. All of this is obviously contributing to a decrease in the number of migrants trying to cross here in San Diego. At the same time, there's been a shift to the east, so a lot of migrants who used to cross in San Diego are now crossing in places like Arizona and Texas, or trying to at least.
Fronteras reporter Adrian Florido. The Census Bureau says more immigrants are coming to California from Asia than from Latin America. In 2011, the number of Asian immigrants was more than double the number from Latin America. One analyst says California's troubled economy is apparently a major factor in the shift. California has been awarded $674 million. It's a federal grant to build an online insurance marketplace. It's part of the state's implementation of the Affordable Care Act. Later this year, Covered California will launch a website where individuals and small businesses can compare and enroll in health plans. Coverage will begin in 2014. Also today, the California Endowment pledged $225 million to help implement health care reform in the state. An arrest at an Occupy San Diego protest is becoming a federal case. Ray Lutz is suing the city for wrongful arrest over this incident in Civic Center Plaza. City attorneys say police acted in good faith, and this week they want a motion to move the matter to federal court. A Marine recruit was arrested this morning after jumping a fence and racing across the runway at San Diego Airport. Harbor police say he had some cuts from climbing over razor wire between the airport and the Marine Corps recruit depot. They say it's not the first time recruits have trespassed. No flights were disrupted this time. Japan Airlines says its flight cancellations between San Diego and Tokyo will continue into next week. The airline's 787 Dreamliners have been grounded because of mechanical problems, including electrical fires and fuel leaks. The airline says passengers who were flying to or from San Diego will be rerouted to other airports. California's High-Speed Rail Authority is joining forces with Amtrak to find trains capable of running up to 220 miles per hour. The trains must be able to work for both systems, and they say their combined buying power should help get better pricing from manufacturers. Regents at the University of California say they can avoid raising student tuitions this fall if UC gets the funding increase proposed in Governor Jerry Brown's budget. He proposed an extra $250 million for UC, less than the Regents wanted, but they say they still welcome the increase. The governor wants colleges to control spending, stop raising tuition, and create more online courses. A new report says veterans in San Diego are younger and better educated than other parts of the country. The Regional Chamber of Commerce says the vets also earn more money but need more help to find a job. The report says about 241,000 veterans live in the county. Nearly 43% of them have completed at least some college, and nearly 36% have a bachelor's degree. We know traffic keeps getting busier and our water bills keep going up, but what else is changing and affecting our quality of life in San Diego? The nonprofit Equinox Center keeps track of all sorts of trends. This week, they released their 4th annual Quality of Life report. KPBS reporter Allison St. John checks on some of the findings.
San Diego has wonderful beaches and plenty of sunshine, but is the quality of life here sustainable?
San Diegans pride themselves on having a better quality of life than people living in Los Angeles. But it turns out that San Diegans drive more miles per day than Los Angeles residents do.
In fact, the number of highway vehicle miles traveled in San Diego is higher than just about anywhere else in the state. One reason people are driving further is because they can't afford to buy a house near where they work.
The cost of housing is becoming such a crisis. The policymakers are behind the 8 ball. They do not realize that this thing is coming and rolling.
Laurie Filer, former mayor of Escondido and a policy expert, is now the chair of the independent Equinox Center. She says the region will need to build more than 200,000 new homes to accommodate the growth that's coming.
And the growth is going to come from our children and grandchildren. It's not really from other areas. It's our children, and we would like our children to stay here. And the more families that end up having to double up because their college graduates can't find a home that's affordable, the more they'll realize policies need to change so that we can have affordability.
It's not just policies that need to change, Filer says. People's attitudes need to change too.
I do think that as time passes and people realize that their children and grandchildren can't afford to buy a house, that when you show up at a city council meeting and say, I don't want that housing development, that you're directly impacting your children and grandchildren.
Livia Borak is part of the new generation of San Diegans who's choosing to live in an apartment rather than a house with a garden to be near where she works.
It's about a mile, a little less than a mile from the office, so I can walk, I can ride my bike, which I do mostly in the summer, and I don't have to worry about sitting in traffic and commuting.
Borak works for the Coast Law Group in Encinitas, which is heavily involved in lawsuits over how to develop the region more sustainably. She says SANDAG, the regional planning agency that controls transit, should take the lead over the cities that control housing.
SANDAG has to take the leadership role saying, we're going to put transit where it makes sense, and the land use has to follow suit.
Borak says the current feuding over which city gets more money from SANDAG isn't going to result in good regional planning for a sustainable future. Housing and traffic are just 2 of the factors that affect our quality of life. The Equinox report shows other worrisome trends. Ann Tartra says water use is on the rise again this year after 2 years of serious conservation.
There's a few factors that resulted in water consumption going up in the region. One is the weather. We had a drier year in 2012, and so because so much of our water use is focused on landscaping in the area, people tend to use more water when there's drier weather.
Tartra says she's working to get San Diego companies to sign on to the goal of creating a more sustainable future. Ann Hunter of Hunter Industries in San Marcos is one.
When we identified the fact that we wanted to reduce our environmental footprint, that we made a commitment. And so we just started looking at what we could do and taking baby steps.
The company is monitoring energy use. It has a target to cut waste to zero, and it's turning some of the grassy area outside the building back to natural habitat to save water.
Once we have a report, hopefully we can influence other people to do the same things, same thing with their own companies, influence our own customers to look at their operations.
Anne Tatra of Equinox says some trends are improving. For example, air quality is better in San Diego than in many other California urban areas.
It's looking this year like there's cause for hope, but it's not cause for celebration yet. We think the region has a long way to go in terms of becoming a model for sustainable development, and we think that the region has that potential.
There are just over 3 million of us living in San Diego County now. Within the next 20 years, we'll be 4 million. It's up to planners and politicians and corporations and people like you and me to understand the changes we need to make to preserve this quality of life. Alison St. John, KPBS News.
Of course, there is much more to talk about when it comes to quality of life in San Diego. Here with more on what can be done to improve our community is Equinox Center's Anne Tart. Anne, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, why is this in-depth quality of life report done? I think this is the 4th time in a row, right? Every year. Why is that so important to do?
At Equinox Center, we believe that what gets measured gets managed better, and so we think it's important for the region to get the facts and have the data every year to see how we're doing and how our region compares to other regions and how the cities within the region compare to each other.
How did you measure this? How did you get the information?
We spend months actually doing research from academic sources, from government sources, over 50 credible sources, and we gather that information and then we make sure that it's really credible, and we do research to identify interesting bright spots in the region and things that are already working so that we can show people that it's doable and we can just have more of that.
Well, this report is actually online and it's very visually interactive and user friendly. It basically, there's idea bubbles that will clearly offer ideas on what needs to be done. Tell us about this one bubble I saw that talks about streetlight retrofitting as it relates to more jobs.
That's a great initiative that Clean Tech San Diego and SDG&E, I believe, and about 13 municipalities in the region have been working on over the past few years to replace inefficient streetlights in those communities with more efficient LED lighting. And it's saving taxpayers money because they're using less energy in the cities, but it's also creating jobs and revenue for electrical contractors who are helping with the project. So it's kind of a win-win for both the environment and the economy.
There was another bubble idea that stood out in my mind, and it was called Look Near First. What is that about?
This is a program that was initiated by Connect, another nonprofit organization in the region, and they are focusing on how to get local businesses here in the region outsourcing to other local businesses. So instead of going, abroad or to another state to find vendors, looking around here first to see what other businesses are available that might be able to be suppliers or vendors for their work.
Well, Mayor Bob Filner told me, and actually the city in his city state address as well, that he's not going to renew city contracts to outside businesses, out of the area businesses, until he sees if they can actually find a company here that can do the same job. Are you working with the city, or will you be working with the city on trying to implement some of these ideas?
We definitely plan to help advance those policies in the region. As I said, it's kind of a no-regret strategy. It's a win-win, and individual consumers can help as well by also looking for locally made products and seeing what they can do to support the local economy.
You actually gave an example of the waste, Del Mar, and the waste management of food, I believe. Tell me about that.
Well, Del Mar, the city of Del Mar in the past year has implemented new recycling programs to help get their per capita waste production down. Unfortunately, we've seen them be the second worst in the county for a few years in a row, so they're really taking this data seriously and have done something about it.
Yeah, they saw your data and then made these changes.
That's right.
Okay. The report also notes that last November, San Diego designated more than 6,000 acres of city-owned canyons as protected protection. How would that impact, let's say, the quality of life in San Diego?
It impacts quality of life in a number of different ways. First of all, it makes those canyons safer for people to go and to use. They'll be cleaned up likely, and people will be able to go and hike and run in them. So in these urban areas, there's much more open space. People will get more physical exercise. It also just helps our natural ecosystem as well. It helps the water be cleaner when those canyons are cleaned up and protected. So we'll have less polluted runoff. So there's a number of ways that it helps quality of life.
And what else haven't we covered that you want to mention about this report?
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that air quality in the region has improved significantly, and that's just positive for all of us. There's really good action on climate change, but there's also some concerns on things like water consumption, water quality, and transportation issues. Those are persistent challenges that we need to address in the region.
All right, so Equinox Center and TART, thanks so much for joining us. Now you can access San Diego's Quality of Life Report on our website at kpbs.org.
A major figure in Orange County's 1994 bankruptcy has died. Robert Citron was the OC treasurer and tax collector. He put public money into complicated investments, at first getting high returns, but eventually losing $1.6 billion. A grand jury found he turned to an astrologer and a psychic for interest rate predictions. He pleaded guilty to 6 felony counts. Citron died yesterday after a heart attack. And the woman known to newspaper readers as Dear Abby has died at the age of 94. Pauline Friedman Phillips doled out advice on love and life from the 1950s until 2002, when she announced she had Alzheimer's disease. Giving advice from a family affair was actually a family affair. Phillips' twin sister wrote the Ann Landers column, which sometimes appeared in the same papers as Dear Abby.
I'm Ray Suarez. On the next NewsHour, the politics of gun control, plus the latest on the hostage crisis in Algeria. That's Thursday on the PBS NewsHour.
San Diego Assistant Police Chief and frequent KPBS guest Boyd Long is retiring. Long is a 28-year veteran of the police force. He's been in charge of patrol operations for 5 years. Once he takes off the badge, he'll start a second career as a vice president at Valley View Casino. Part of the new job, managing security. And former Chargers head coach Norv Turner has a new job tonight. He'll be working for a man who used to work for him in San Diego. Turner's been named offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. The team's head coach is the Chargers' former assistant coach, Rob Chesnesky. He calls Turner one of the most respected offensive coaches in the NFL. The Karin are an ethnic minority in the Southeast Asian country, of Myanmar. Millions of people fled the country because of civil war, and about 1,200 have settled in San Diego. They stay connected to their culture through special programs. Tonight, we get a look at the Karin New Year celebration through the lens of video journalist Brian Myers of Speak City Heights and the Media Arts Center.
The Karin New Year is so basically the most important event a year for them, and then their ancestors saying that they have to keep their culture. They have to keep your culture. You have to celebrate Karin New Year, even if you're in Karin state or even if you're outside of the state. So even if they are here, far away from Karin state, they try to do this Karin New Year every year. Very work so hard. Basically, we do start working for this Karin New Year event in August. Every year, about August to July, we started the leadership committee for the Karin New Year planning committee, and then everybody plan the practice. Some youth kind of started to forget about the dancing or music, so the older generation teach them how to sing a song or traditional dance for the Karin New Year. So this is a huge event for them, not only for their culture, also to preserve their culture over here in the United States. We wanted to show this beautiful culture to the San Diego community so that they can learn about this new population. I think some people know, but many people don't know about this community. Karin people, they are originally from Burma, but because of the powerful government over there, they have to learn, they have to flee from their own Karin state to the Thailand border, Thailand refugee camp. And then most of them live there like for 20 years, more than 20 years. Some youth here, they born in refugee camp on the border of Thailand and Burma. and then they got a chance to come to the United States as for the federal resettlement program, and then they get here.
We hope, we wish Karin New Year will bring you future and success. So thank you very much.
The Karin organization of San Diego opened its first resource center last fall. You can learn more about the community of Karin San Diego at karinsandiego.org. Well, have you thawed out yet? We have more warm weather on the way for San Diego. A nice break from last weekend's big chill. The Weather Service is forecasting temperatures in the 70s through most of the county for the next few days. The exception will be in the mountains, where temperatures will be mostly in the 50s with plenty of sunshine. Partly cloudy in the desert heading into the holiday weekend. It was 13 years ago this month when JJ the whale was rescued. JJ became a big star in San Diego and had fans around the world. In tonight's About San Diego, Ken Kramer takes us back to remember the little whale who grew into a huge celebrity.
It all started on a beach near Los Angeles. A baby gray whale, just a few days old, lost its mother. It was sick and weak. Rescuers brought it to SeaWorld, and nobody could be sure how this was going to work out because never before had any gray whale been cared for in captivity. It was a fascinating thing to watch. She was fed formula, gallons and gallons of it, and day by day the young whale grew bigger, put on more than 8 tons of weight. Where some scientists had originally worried that she might just die in captivity, she in fact thrived. Meantime, the whole drama caught the attention of San Diegans who followed the story week by week on the news. And then, in April of 1998, it was decided JJ was now strong enough. It was time for JJ to go back home where she belonged. The world was now following the story of the little gray whale that had grown up a lot. It was announced that JJ, now weighing 19,000 pounds, the first California gray whale ever to be rescued, was going to be released back into the sea. When that April day came, she was put into a bright red 32-foot canvas sling.
Obviously to safely lift her into the transport container, but also to have her properly balanced, because when she's on the Coast Guard vessel, they'll need proper balance to safely swing her over the side.
Out of the pool and into a flatbed truck, JJ had become an international celebrity. A global television audience was following every step of the process. But this was a living creature that so many people had invested so much emotion in for so long that every step had to, at the same time, be delicate. School kids around San Diego who had been following the story were watching too.
I'm happy that she's being released, but I hope she doesn't bang into a boat.
News helicopters circled overhead as JJ's convoy came out of the SeaWorld parking lot, then went down Pacific Coast Highway to the U.S. Navy Pier, and the idea was then, when she was released, she'd be tracked. So you can see there's a backpack that contained a transmitter so researchers could follow her north to Alaska if that's where she was headed. Then, hoisted up by a 20-ton crane and transferred over to a Coast Guard cutter, JJ was carried under the San Diego Coronado Bay Bridge, and finally, about 3 miles off Point Loma.
She took off, went south for like maybe 20 feet, and then just whipped right around, made a quick U-turn, and went like a bat out of hell, headed sort of on the northwest, headed northwest.
See that?
We saw it, but she was gone.
Everything went fine, and for those kids watching, it was a relief.
I felt like real nervous, like is there going to be a trap and there's going to be killer whales there, or like go to Alaska. I hope don't let anything stop you from going.
Scientists wanted to follow her, but you know what? JJ gave researchers the slip. Tracked for about 3 or 4 days, she somehow shook off the backpack and was never heard from again. You can call that sad if you want, but I don't really think so. I like to think that JJ found friends in the ocean world, that what she did and where she went is her business, and that in the end both she and her human caretakers benefited from the whole adventure. And really, that's how it ought to be. A fitting end to this story about San Diego.
Archive video comes from our About San Diego partner station, NBC7 San Diego. By the way, JJ was named for the late Judy Jones, director of a Marine Mammal Rescue Center. If you'd like to see more of Ken's stories about San Diego, his half-hour show can be seen tonight and every Thursday night at 8 on KPBS. Recapping tonight's top stories, federal regulators say they've created an oversight panel for the San Onofre plant in the North County. The panel will evaluate a proposal to restart the nuclear facility. They'll also search for the root cause of problems with the plant's steam generators. It's been nearly a year since a leak prompted the plant to shut down. The panel will be led by a deputy from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Border Patrol says arrests in the San Diego region fell last year to the lowest level in more than 4 decades. Agents made over 28,000 arrests during the last fiscal year. The year before, there were about 42,000 arrests. Last year's number is the lowest in the San Diego area since 1968. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.